This is a tutorial of how I do my shading with Paint Tool SAI. I hope you enjoy. Hey guys, it's Dark Righty here, and I'll be showing you how I do my shading in Paint Tool SAI. And this is the second winner of my art raffle. It's been a long time since I finally got to it, and the character's name is Raticence. And let me say, this is a beautiful character design. I hope so far I got the design correct. And so, let's begin. The first thing I do when I start shading is I pick a multiply layer under mode, and then I take, well, you want to choose a color that will match the shading. You do not want to use black and white. I used to do that and it actually didn't make the character per se pop. It's like basic and it doesn't add value to it very much. And so what you usually want to do is you want to pick between a blue, like a light blue area, or and sometimes in a purplish or pinkish light area, always right in this gradient of either. I mean, you can use different colors like the lights, blues, whatever matches the character better, because what will happen, it will kinda look like that. As of a black or white, well, it's, you can see it doesn't really add too much value into it. And the example I'm going to show you is the two or three ones, well, commissions I did before, and this one is in black and white. And you can really tell, I know it's a terrible drawing, it's kind of old, but I did this in mainly black and white, and you can see that it doesn't make it pop very much. As of this one, I did in a purple gradient, in which, I'm sorry I don't have my SAI open for it, just a PNG file. And same with this, I did this in more of a yellow and a blue tone, and you can really tell how much of a difference it makes if you use the light blue gradients and or purples or anything, even the yellows. So, with that being said, the first thing I like to do is I like to start my shadows. And this is a new technique I actually started to develop. And what I do, I take my pen and I want to do probably right in here of the gradients, so kind of look like that. So I'll cover up where I want to have the shading, and then slowly kind of carve out the shading areas. Usually make a mark in the face, again go down the neck area of the character. And now what you want to do is basically, well, what I do, so I take my eraser and I kinda make 4 markings, kinda. You don't have to do this, but it kinda helps. So you can go ahead and do what I'm basically doing. And now I usually got a base basically of my main shadow, and I will then take the one blend tool and blend it out to make it look softer. You want to make sure that the blending is equally blended out and very, very smooth. If you want this, you can keep it that like what I just showed you and just edge out more of the fur areas, so it almost resembles the cell shade, but I like smoothing it out because I think it really brings out the character in my point of view. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up. And you'll see me switch between my blend, my airbrush, and my ink pen on and off. That's like the main 4 tools I use in shading. And my airbrush is usually in the 61 dents area because I don't like it having too dense, so I can actually work with the shading. Right now all I'm doing is still picking out my light areas of where I want my light to be, so it's not, you know, too much. Okay, since you got that all done, what I do next is I like to adjust how dark I want it. I don't want it too dark like all the way, but whatever you want, go right ahead. Whatever you feel comfortable with and whatever you think looks the best. I'm probably gonna set it in the 83% area. Now, what I do next is I make another layer on top of that layer and set it to multiply. I'm going to be using multiply for most of the dark shading, and then I'll get to the light in a couple minutes. And for the light, I still use the blue, purples, and the gradients because it just makes the pop. I do not use white. Just to let you know. And if you're doing backgrounds, if you have like a certain color in the background, you most likely want to add that color into the areas of the wolf, like as the lighting. Like, for instance, like I did this. Since it has a purplish blue sky area, I did a lot of pink and purple highlights with her. So, anyway, back to the shading. Next thing I like to do is I like to go around the fur and do the shadows of the fur and the snout and under the eyes. I'll go ahead and show you how I do this. I take my ink pen, I set it to probably around like 120 or like a 50, and I just outline where I think the shadows go like this, usually on the same side of each fur that I use. And I usually do the neck around this, yeah. And the snout I usually do like little half moon circles on each side and some in the middle. And I'm gonna go and do that and fast forward. Okay, so the next step after you get the main shading done with the fur, and it kind of looks kind of weird right now, but you're going to take the blend tool and you're going to blend all that out to make it look even. And the key to this is you don't want to blend it out too much because you still want to see it, but you want to blend enough out that it isn't too sticking out per se like it is already. But if you like how the general look it is now, you can totally do that. So I'm going to speed this up. Now, since it's all blended out, what I do next is I also like to set this like either not too popping out, but like in between. I don't want it completely lost because it ends up looking like that, but probably right in there. And without it, this is what it looks like. So it's really coming together. Now the next thing, I like to darken the shading areas of the fur, so I do multiply again, and I like taking my airbrush tool, setting it to simple circle, and probably around maybe 200 of a brush size, and I like to go under the fur, do small areas like this to create more of a shadow depth to the fur. So you don't have to do this, but I like doing it to make it more depth of a shade, and I'll speed it up. Okay, so I quickly did that, and I'd like to do a second layer of that, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that and fast forward. And still the same thing, I'll multiply. Okay, I touched it up a little bit with that, and so the next thing I like to do is, I gotta think, I like to go around and kind of darken up over here where the main shadow is, and some in around his, well, this area, and a little bit in his chest with the airbrush tool. And I usually make this like really big, and of course still in that color. Now I'm going to do this, darken up the edges, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Okay, since I'm done doing that a little bit, I didn't do too much, so I'm going to line it up a little bit, and like I said, if these color tones with the shading looks too dark to you, mess around with the opacity, and you can get to a tone of what you like. So I might go around and mess with the opacity a little bit with these to line them up a little bit. Okay, so this is the part that usually takes forever for me to do, and it is shading the actual fur, like adding the lines in the fur to make it more realistic looking, like all the waves and everything. So of course you want to make another multiply layer, and of course you always want to add a multiply layer over the already existing ones. So what I usually do, I usually take my ink pen, and I probably keep it at 120. I might change it, and what I usually do, it's hard to explain how I do it, but I hope you understand by just looking and watching. Now end up something like that, and you want to do that with like most of the body. I usually don't do as much near the face, I'll do it kind of half, but usually the rest of the body where it's mainly fur area, I won't do it. So I'm going to fast forward it and see how it looks. Okay, since I just got done all the shading, now usually what I do next, I usually mess with the opacity, because usually sometimes when it's this bold, it kinda doesn't look too good, so usually I set it on the low side. Okay, so now since we got mainly all the shading done, now's the fun part, the lighting. And what I usually do first is I usually go around the furs and kind of lighten them up a little bit. So first I usually set mine to luminosity, and I'm still using around here. And I'm still using my ink pen, and sometimes I might go on the fur and kind of do that. But actually, I need to shade that eye a little bit if I can find the layer. There it is. I usually save the eye for last, so I'm gonna quickly do this. So back to luminosity. First, I think I'm actually going to go around and lighten them. First, like the whole area. Usually I go around here, here, over here, and it's gonna look so weird at first, but I promise you, it's gonna make it better. And usually you want to use the biggest brush, and kinda go into it in certain areas. Okay, since I picked my lighting areas, I usually then go with my blend tool and blend it all out. What I usually do is set the luminosity always on top of the multiply layers, and if it looks too bright, I usually put the opacity down like usual, and or put more multiply layers on top, which about right there I think is nice. Whatever suits you, choose of how you want to shade. Okay, so the next, I think I'm going to do luminosity and probably set the blue over here, and then this is mainly, there's something I want to do to make it more pop out. If for say there's a light, like a blue black background, I usually would use this. And so I go in, almost back over the light areas I just did, and kinda make them brighter, or kinda go around the rim. And then after you do that, with the airbrush tool, I like to smooth it all out. Okay, so I want to do, actually I want to erase the blue in the nose because I don't think the flatters it too much. So what I do next to the nose, I usually take luminosity, and this is like the only time you see me using white. And I make little dots on the nose to make it kind of pop. So you usually end up something like this, and you can keep on like shading certain areas, lining it up, and you'll get something pretty similar. And so this is how I mainly shade, and I might go in the eye and shade that, so I'll do that quick. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go around and kind of touch up on the lightings and the dark areas, and you don't really have to do this step. So if you really like it how it is already, then that's really good. So I'm gonna go and shade and adjust some of the lighting, and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm usually basically done by this point, so I hope this tutorial helps of how I shade, and I hope that helps you with your shading if you want to know how I shade and what are the proper steps. And I know this one kind of looks a lot on the blue side, and it may not look too good to some people, but I think it looks good for the most part. And so I'm just going to finish up at my watermarks, and I'm going to show you how to do a PNG file with a transparent background if you want to learn that. Okay, since I got my watermarks done, I'm gonna now do my transparent background. To that, I usually go to the line art, and I click outside of it, or you don't really have to do this, and you make a layer on the way bottom of everything. All your layers, well, your shading layer, your lighting layers, and your colors, everything. It must be on the bottom, and then you choose a color. It can be any color. I'm just gonna pick a really random color, and just fill in the background in this color. Okay, once you got that done, you want to hide the layer and unselect everything. since you got that done, now you must go to your file, save as, and you want to name it a PNG. You press save, and you always want to pick 32 BPP AR gigabyte opacity. And there you go, you got your transparent background. And there you go, guys. That's how I shade with Paint Tool SAI. I hope this really helps, and I hope I explained everything quite well to you, and I hope this helps you a lot. I know I just said that, but yeah. Like I said, this is one of my second winners of my art raffle of their character Radiance. So yes, this is their character, not mine. See you guys. I hope you enjoyed.